As some of you may know, I recently had an outbreak of a fish parasite that killed some of my fish in my main tank. Now I've pulled the fish that survived out of the tank and I'm treating them in a hospital tank, but when they go back in, I want there to be a UV steriliser in my main tank. However, when I've gone looking for a UV steriliser in the past, the one I've ended up with has either been absolutely massive or a pain in the ass to use, maintain, change the bulb and all those sorts of things. But I finally found one that ticks all the boxes I look for and has a ton of really useful features, and that is the Deltec UV Steriliser. So in this video I'll tell you everything you need to know about it, I'll tell you about all the features, I'll show you how I've got it installed, and of course I'll tell you about all the downsides. Now there's no disclaimer needed, this video is not sponsored, I bought both of these UV Sterilisers with my own money, so let's get stuck in. The first thing I'm going to tell you about is a few of the design features and how it works, the functionality pieces. So the first thing that's really clever about this is the size. So this is the 10 watt version, so it holds a 10 watt bulb, and just this is tiny. For a 10 watt UV steriliser, it's absolutely minute. And to give you an idea of just how small it is, I also have, historically I've used EHEIM UV sterilisers. This is my 11 watt EHEIM UV steriliser. This is my new 10 watt Deltec UV Steriliser. It's just minute. It's just, let me see if I can show you it better. It's just tiny. It's not quite half the size, but it's about 1/3 of the size. So for a start, size is brilliant because these are normally really big, so it's quite difficult sometimes to find somewhere to fit them in the sump. The second thing about also that helps this fit in your sump is that the EHEIM one is mostly metal build. It's got some screws on the bottom. It does have a wall mounting bracket, but you can't put it in the water. You can't put it in the sump. The Deltec one though, this is completely plastic. This is just one injection molded plastic piece. The bottom, you can hear that, it's completely hollow, just plastic, no metal parts. So you can submerge this. The top part up here, from here upwards, has to be out of the water, and you'll want to make sure that this will still be out of the water when you turn your return pump off and the sump goes up, so you don't want this too deep in your sump, but you can completely submerge this, probably up to here realistically is where you're going to go. So that makes it really easy. You can keep it out of the way and it will still work really well. And if you don't want to submerge it, if you just want to mount it in your cabinet, it has these wall mounts. So there's got little feet that you stick to the wall. As you can see here, you just screw them in place. So you'll just put this on your wall and it will just sit on your cabinet. The only thing I don't like about that is they've not given any thought to this being removed. So once you screw it in, you can't just slide it out and lift it up and off. That is going nowhere. So if you wanted to take it off, you'd have to unscrew it first. It's not a major effort, it's not a major deal, but it's just one of those things that I would have liked to see, that you can just have a method so you slip it in and then lift it off the screw. But either way, it's got the option of wall mounting, and the only thing you need to think about is you want it to be low enough so you can lift the whole bulb out without it getting stuck against the top of your cabinet. And actually, on the point of it being small, the one thing I should say is I have the 10 watt version and the 48 watt version. These two are small. The others you want to check the sizes of because they're slightly funny. The 20 watt version, for example, is actually massive compared to the 10 watt version, and I think it might even be longer than the 48 watt version, so you do need to check the sizes, but the 10 watt and the 48 watt are really super compact. The next feature to tell you about is the easy bulb change process. Now with the EHEIM one I have, changing the bulb is just a bit of a faff, and it always puts me off, so it never happens when it needs to happen. But with this, it's absolutely super easy. So it has this quartz sleeve that sits inside, so that goes in there, sits in there like that. So that will always be in there 100% of the time. This is the actual UV bulb, and the UV bulb sits in there, and actually let me just attach it to the power supply so you can see exactly how it works. Okay, so when you're changing the bulb, okay, so it turns out the inner quartz sleeve is quite fragile and you need to be very careful with it, and I just had to spend £18 replacing it. All I really need to tell you is that you can get these as replacements, but make sure you don't throw away the rubber gasket on your broken one, because when you buy the quartz sleeve you just get the glass, you don't get a new rubber gasket. Okay, so there are a few other things I need to show you, but before I move on to that, let's go back and do the bulb change and do it properly this time. So to change the bulb, all you need to do is unscrew the top, pull that out, pop the old bulb off, pretend that's a new one, pop a new bulb in, slide that back into the quartz sleeve, and then screw the top on and it's done. So this is how I've got it plumbed in, and I have both basically set up the same way. There's a small pump at the bottom. I'll tell you more about what pump you need at the end. There's a small pump at the bottom that just connects with a bit of flexible hose to the inlet right at the bottom, and then there's another outlet, just a flexible hose that goes out the top, and that is it. Really simple, takes 2 seconds to do. Now I'll show you what it looks like in the sump. And here is what it looks like in my sump. So I've got it upright. You can obviously have it the same way on your cabinet door or sideways or whatever. I originally actually had this across here with some little hooks that sat on the side and gripped it in place, but I decided it's much better, much more space saving to have it upright like that. So I just have a little 3D printed bracket. I'll tell you more about that at the end. It's a 3D printed bracket I made, and that's it. All there is to it. Just sits in the sump, bolt upright. Just at the bottom there, you could just about see there's about ½ an inch, a couple of centimeters maybe at the most, between the bottom of the sump and the bottom of the UV steriliser. You can just about see there's a Jacod pump there connected to a bit of flexible hose that goes into the bottom. And then there is the outlet. Again, a bit of flexible hose that I've pointed out that way, which is back towards the skimmer, and that's how it's set up. And it's the same story with my little 10-watt unit, which again, I have mounted to the side of my sump, and it just goes down, and as you can see, the pump sits just inside the water. Here's a front on view. You can't really see the underside of it because my sump is absolutely filthy, but you get the idea. The penultimate feature I want to show you then helps you see that the light is on. On all the UV sterilisers I've had in the past, you just have to take its word for it that it's turned on because you can't see the bulb glowing, but Deltec have come up with a clever idea to fix that, and in order to show you, I need to turn the cabinet light off. So there you go. If you are wondering why their plumbing outlets are white, not black, it's because you can see this thing glowing in the dark, which means you know that the UV bulb is on. And if I can turn it off at the power switch just down here, instantly you can see it's off. Then you can see it's back on, which means if the bulb ever goes, you'll instantly be able to see that you need to replace it. Okay, so that is the install and most of the features covered, but there's just a few more things I need to tell you. First off, another good thing, the power cable is about 9 to 10 feet long, which means you've got loads of space between wherever you mount the UV steriliser in your sump and wherever your plugs go. I said I'd tell you what pump to use. This is a little bit more difficult. They do give you recommended flow rates in the instructions, and on my 10-watt UV steriliser, I have a 500 litre per hour pump, whereas on my 48-watt UV steriliser, I have a 2000 litre per hour pump. However, the instructions don't tell you what flow rate you need to target parasites. It just gives you a maximum flow rate, so it doesn't tell you if that's the maximum flow rate to kill parasites or if it's the maximum flow rate to deal with algae. Now, I have actually contacted Deltec to ask them for that information, so if they do ever reply, I'll put all the data in the description below. But for now, both of my pumps are DC powered, which means I can very easily dial them down, and I have them running both at about 40%, which I think is roughly the right rate to kill parasites. And now I can tell you about the bracket that I use to mount this onto my sump. It is this thing, which I made myself. I designed and made this, and I sell it on my Etsy store, reefdork.etsy.com. It just grips it in place, and then you can see there is where the sump glass goes, and this will go on 8mm glass, 10mm glass, 12mm glass, or even 6mm glass. There are different size ones for different size glasses. The only thing you need to know about this is if you get the 48-watt unit, then you will need a sump with a minimum height of 40 centimeters. If you have it 40 centimeters or less, then the bracket will sit nicely on the top of the sump, and it will grip onto it nicely. If your sump is too small though, if it's 10 centimeters too short, the top of the bracket will sit up here because the UV steriliser will just sit on the base of your glass, and that will be no good to anybody. So do make sure you check the size of your sump, the height of your sump, before you buy one of these. Now, there is one other claim that the manufacturer makes that I don't quite understand about these. It claims that it is twice as powerful as the equivalent conventional UV steriliser because of the quartz sleeve. So for example, my 10-watt and 48-watt units, it says, are equivalent to a 20-watt and 96-watt conventional UV steriliser. I don't really understand how the quartz sleeve makes that difference. Perhaps it protects the bulb from direct contact with the water, and maybe it stops a biofilm growing, I don't know. But again, I have contacted Deltec to ask them to explain that to me, and if they get back to me, I'll put their explanation in the description below. And the only thing the instructions tell me on that point is that you need to take the quartz sleeve out every 6 months, give it a quick wipe down, and then chuck it back in. Now, everything I've said so far has been really positive, because I really like this UV steriliser, but there are a couple of things that I don't like. Firstly is the sizings. Now the 10 watt one that I have is just 30 centimeters tall, so it's nice and compact, and the 48 watt is just 52 centimeters tall, which for a 48 watt bulb is really compact. However, that doesn't apply to all the sizings they do, and for some reason the 20 watt unit they have is 60 centimeters long, 2 feet tall, and the 39 watt is 90 centimeters tall, 3 feet, which is even bigger than the larger 48 watt unit I have, and I have no idea why that is the case. But all that really means is that if you want something compact, the best ones to go for are the 10 watt and the 48 watt, which gives you the best output for the smallest amount of size. The second thing I don't like about these is that they are quite expensive. The 10 watt unit I bought is £160, and I spent 50 quid on a pump, which means the total cost was 210 quid. And the 48 watt unit was £260 plus another 50 quid for a pump. So that's over £300 for the UV steriliser. So ultimately I would like them to be a little bit cheaper, and they're definitely not budget, but I suppose you get what you pay for. And the only other thing I don't like is how fragile the quartz sleeve is. You know that now you've watched this video, so you won't make the same mistake as I do, but I can imagine actually with a slight mistake, it is quite easy to break that quartz sleeve, and then you're on the hook for another 20 quid to replace it. Now I think I've covered everything, but if you've got any questions, do let me know in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe for more Reef Talk extra videos. And until next time, happy reefing.